Thank you.
Don't spoil our future. Fossil extractivism in countries of the global south for Germany's energy supply. Welcome everybody to today's side event at the Youth Day. Today's side event will be about young people addressing the German government about energy supply. My name is Daniela Odowski. I'm the board member of the Catholic Rural Youth Organization, and I'm together with Carla from NAYU. I was the one organizing this event.
Yeah, hello everybody, also from my side. Thank you so much for joining the panel and thank you for joining the audience. My name is Carla Kienel and I'm from the NAYU, the Youth Association for the Protection of Nature, an independent part of the NABU, a German civil society organization. Yeah, I'm very happy to have you all here.
So thank you everyone who's here at this side event, and we are very happy that you as the panelists are here with us today. I will shortly introduce to you the 4 people who are here with us on the panel. We have Gabriel Klaassen, a 24 years old intersectional climate justice activist who is a youth coordinator from South Africa. Gabriel is working with young people across Africa, focusing on action and advocacy. It's a pleasure to have you here, Gabriel.
Thank you for having me.
Then we have Lea Nesselhauf, who's Climate Policy Officer at German Zero. As one of the lead authors, she co-developed a study containing proposals necessary to make Germany climate neutral by 2035. We are very happy to have you on the panel.
Thank you.
Then next to Lea, we have Stefan Wenzel, who is the Parliamentary State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. We are very happy to have you on the panel. And our last panelist is Sofia Gutierrez, who is 20 years old and from Colombia. She's an ecofeminist and focusing on her activism on peace, gender, and human rights issues. Thank you very much, Sofia, for being here with us. In a first very short round, we would like to hear from all the 4 of you what your expectations are for this panel. So maybe Gabriel, you can start if you want.
I think, first of all, thank you once again for having me, and hello everybody. As someone from South Africa, someone from the Global South, I think a big part of my work is making sure that I can elevate the voices of those who can't be in the room. And so that's number 1 priority, as well as emphasizing the fact that young people, not only from my own country, but young people in Germany as well, need to have our voices heard. Our leaders and the world leaders need to be able to not only hear our voices, but act on what we need them to act on for our now and for our future generations to come. Thank you.
Lea?
Yeah, thank you as well for having me here. I'm really happy to be here. I think my first expectation is actually to listen and to learn, mostly from you, Gabriel, and from you, Sophia, about your perspectives, because I think often enough we don't hear voices from the global south enough. But I'm also here to understand your perspective better, because honestly sometimes I don't understand why the German government acts the way it does. And the third reason or the third expectation I have is that we maybe also talk about alternatives and solutions about how to get out of this climate crisis, or at least mitigate the climate crisis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wenzel?
I think we have a couple of problems no country can solve alone. Fighting for peace, fighting against pandemics, and save our climate. We can only do that together, all countries of the world. And that was the Paris Agreement did. Every country of the world agreed to the Paris Agreement. And now we have, we must to implement this in all the different situations we have in all countries all over the world. And I would like to learn from Colombia, from South Africa, and even the discussions you have in your generations.
Thank you very much. Sophia?
My statement here and my participation today is not only mine. I want to emphasize that I come from a delegation of women from Colombia. Jen Lin, she's a YU indigenous people. She's right now in the Colombian Pavilion. That's why she's not here. But our statement is together. For today, we've had a meeting with the Chancellor yesterday. We also delivered the message of loss and damages here too, and we're also here right now. But we want solutions. We want to be listened, and we want actual action.
Okay. Thank you so much for telling us about your expectation. I hope we can, or that will be fulfilled during the panel discussion. We would directly start with the first round of questions. Directly go deep into the topic. With the beginning of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, Germany has been aiming for independence from fossil energy imports from Russia. And regarding hard coal, for example, Germany tried to get independent from Russian hard coal imports. And in order to replace Russian coal, Germany has increased its import from other countries such as South Africa and Colombia, for example. South Africa is one of the biggest hard coal producers in the world, and particularly this year, Germany has increased its imports from South Africa. For example, European countries imported 40% more hard coal from South Africa's main export hub in the first 5 months of this year. And Germany received more than 160 tons from South Africa, also only within the first half of the year. And at the same time, Germany is supporting the Just Energy Transition Partnership Initiative, launched last year at COP26. With South Africa. South Africa is the first country this partnership was agreed to. And it aims to reduce emissions and phase out fossil fuels. And regarding Germany's involvement in the ongoing coal extraction in South Africa on the one hand, and the agreed Just Energy Transition Partnership on the other, I would like to address the first question to you, Gabriel. As an activist and youth coordinator mainly working on this topic, to what extent do current developments in South Africa reflect, from your point of view, a just transition? Do you see this just transition happening?
Thank you for such a question. I think it's very important, first of all, to just lay the land and mention that this is something that we haven't seen before. And so, of course, there's going to be difficulties. But difficulties and something that's new doesn't mean that we shouldn't critique it. We have to be critical about things as they're developing to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. And I want to just open with just something that CAN International's Executive Director, Tasneem Issop, said. She lives in South Africa. She said, this is just an energy transition. There's no justice aspect to it. And I'm paraphrasing more or less, but that's what she said in a more recent event that she was a part of. I think a big problem that we're facing right now is that because we're going through this space where we're trying to figure out how we build our country, how we go forward with renewables and alternatives, there's a lot of unsurety and uncertainty as we move forward. I think a big problem is the mixed signals and the hypocrisy that we're faced with. South Africa is being told to move forward through a just transition to renewables and alternatives, yet we're also being asked to give our coal and give our other resources as well, to continue extracting, to continue devastating the lives of thousands in frontline communities, thousands of lives, children, women, youth, all put at the stake for other countries' want for coal. In this case, Germany. Germany, in a meeting and a conversation that we had with Mr. Scholz recently, he mentioned that it makes sense that we're kind of going through and that Germany is giving, the portion that they're giving into this Just Transition Partnership. But at the same time, it's quite hilarious to watch him pay to continue polluting. It's atrocious, actually. And I think it kind of really weakens the efforts of the Just Energy Transition Partnership. This should be something that is co-created by civil society in South Africa, not just government and business. It should be something that we are all proud of moving forward with. Not a loan, which this is, a loan with interest that we have to pay. Our transitioning out of it should be us paying it back. It shouldn't be us paying a loan back. There are so many countries right now that are trying to move forward and grow and build our economy. And the lie and the myth of, we'll build our economy on fossil fuels is one that very few say, but then the global north grab onto and run with. Youth and communities on the front line want to move forward with a just transition. But somehow, at the end of the day, government doesn't allow us to actually actively engage that space. And so I think that's kind of a big part of it, is that this doesn't really feel like a just transition. It just feels like an energy transition, actually. It's from one aspect to another. It feels as though young people who are going to inherit the decisions that are happening right now, actually, are purposefully being left out of the space. Communities who are living 1 kilometer away from coal-fired power stations are suffering. I mean, we don't want this. We don't want more coal in our country. We've launched a court case called Cancel Coal in the hope to move away from new coal-fired power. That's how much we don't want new coal investment to continue to use this. And yet, countries like Germany, not only Germany, of course, but countries like Germany want to continue to extract and exploit our resources. So I see the opportunity for a just energy transition in South Africa. I really do. But as of right now, it doesn't feel like there's any justice in it.
Thank you so much, Gabriel, for your statement. Now I would like to hand over to you, Lea. As an expert in Germany's, especially national energy policies, I'd like to ask you, how do you evaluate the current situation, the current Germany's actions and energy policies?
Thank you. I think I would like to answer with the motto of this pavilion, because it's called Ambition and Solidarity. And I think right now we're neither seeing enough ambition nor enough solidarity. Because when it comes to ambition, the German emission reduction targets are not in line with the 1.5 degree limit. And the measures and policies we have in place so far are not even sufficient to fulfill these insufficient targets. So I think that's also why we can't really talk about solidarity then, because we are not keeping our promise. And you already mentioned, Gabriel, the increased demand, especially of LNG, that was set off by the EU's plan to become independent of Russia, has also led to energy shortages in other countries, especially in Asia. So I think we can't really talk about climate policies and solidarity in Germany right now.
Okay, thank you. Now that we had already the South African and German perspective on Germany's fossil fuel extraction and energy policies, I would like to come to the Colombian perspective. Similar to South Africa, coal imports from Colombia to Germany and other European countries have increased this year again. So could you give us an insight into the Colombian reality and how this affects your country?
So from Jenlyne's community, she lives right next to the biggest open pit mine in Colombia, in Latin America, that is El Cerrejón. You've heard of it, as I can see. Her community has been impacted directly, not only for the food that she's been their community has been losing, but also El Cerrejón has destroyed the more than 7,800 acres of land without any significant restoration of the biodiversity. More than 405,000 Wayu indigenous people have been directly affected by El Cerrejón. They have been displaced, their human rights have been violated. Germany always supports the peace process in Colombia, and it's one of the countries that it's watching the peace agreement since 2016. But still, they're still financing somehow the war in my country. Colombia is the fourth provider of carbon to Germany, of coal, sorry, carbon is in Spanish, of coal to Germany. And right now, as Carla was mentioning, the demanding is increasing. And where is that coal coming from? From El Cerrejón. The International Human Rights Court has said that El Cerrejón must be closed due to the human rights violation that is taking place in my country. But it cannot be closed if countries like Germany are still demanding the Colombian coal.
Thank you. The three statements emphasized already Germany's strong support for continued or even expanded extraction of fossil fuels, be it in Colombia or South Africa, where mainly hard coal gets extracted, or, for example, in Senegal, where the German government plans to open up new gas fields. All this happens despite the commitment Germany made last year with signing the Glasgow Statement on International Public Support for the Clean Energy Transition at COP26. And this statement stipulates that by the end of 2022, no further investment in fossil fuels should be made. So the question to you, Mr. Wenzel, would be how your department plans to stick with a 1.5 path regarding the current actions taken.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your impressive speech about the situations in your countries. I see that you're looking directly to the impact in the last months, and we have in the last months a special situation because the Russian war against Ukraine is also a war which uses energy as a weapon. And so we are committed to the Paris Agreement since 2015. We want to reach the 1.5 goal, and we're working very hard on that. We have already about 48–50% of the electricity in Germany from renewables. And the Parliament decided in summer that we want to reach 80% until 2030, and we want to be climate neutral until 2045. And in every sectors, not only in electricity, also in traffic, in buildings and agriculture, and every sector. So on the one hand, we are going straight ahead. On the other hand, we have to deal with the situation of the Russian war. But what we achieved also in the last months, we saved energy. We used about 20, maybe 25% less gas because the companies, the people, they used less energy and saved it. So I think also with coal, maybe we're using in this year and the next year more coal to come over the winter. We're losing less gas, and we have an emission trade system where every emission is counted. So if we're using if you're using more coal in this winter or in the next winter, we're using less coal in the next years. This is part of the emission trade system because every company who emits emissions with fossil fuels have to pay for it and have to use one of these emission allowances. And if you used it for one time, you can't use it for a second time. So we want to, we are committed in the Glasgow and the G7 goal to end finance public finance of the unabated fossil fuel sector. That was last year at the COP in Glasgow. And the G7 committed about this in the summer. And that's still a very important goal, even if there are some limited and clearly defined circumstances where you can make, where you can deal with the situation we have now because of the war. But we want to keep in contact with what happens in the countries we're buying for. On the other hand, we're discussing about a law about Sorgfaltspflicht in the supply chains. And that's also dealing with, for example, environmental assessment or labor rights and all stuff like that. If you have in Germany an industry or you have a mine, you are committed also to environmental assessment, or you're committed to labor work. That must be also in other countries where we buy in raw materials, for example. So I would be interested to hear also what happens with the labor rights and the environmental assessments, because even if Germany stops to buying all coal in the next years, there will be it would be also necessary to discuss these items, to be careful in the supply chains.
Thank you very much. So maybe before we come to your question, I would now like to hear from you, Lea. What do you think about the plans of Germany to stay with this plan on the 1.5 path? Do you think that the exceptions which are mentioned in the Glasgow commitment, do they apply?
I think we are breaking our commitment to the Glasgow that we gave in Glasgow. And I think the most important point for me is that, yes, we're seeing improvements in Germany, and I also understand that the German government is in a difficult situation right now. But I think what I don't understand is that there would be an alternative, which means like taking stronger climate mitigation measures in Germany. I've been working with over 200 experts on a huge study. We looked at, it was basically a meta study. We looked at over 1,000 different studies and composed a legislative package. And the outcome was that we found that it would be possible for Germany to become climate neutral by 2035. And I think it's always better to just cut down emissions than to kind of postpone it into the future. And like regarding the crisis right now, there's a recent study that showed that if the government took additional measures in the building sectors, like for example insulating buildings and exchanging heat pumps or building in heat pumps, that we could cut 40% more emissions until 2030 than what is planned right now. And if we did that, we would not even need the 2 additional permanent LNG terminals that are being built right now. So I think what really worries me is the overcapacities we are building up right now. There is a study from E3G that just came out today that said that there might be 500 megatons of LNG by 2030 that would be like an oversupply, which is 5 times the Russian EU gas imports. So I think that's like the other part that's really worrying, that if we say we need this as a short-term solution, but actually it's not going to be a short-term solution because the permanent LNG terminals need some time to be built, and once we have them, I'm really worried that we get this technological lock-in effect, that we will continue using them and then continue breaking the commitment we gave in Glasgow.
Thank you, Lea. So maybe you want to already react on what you said.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because we don't want an overcapacity, and we don't want a new fossil fuels lock-in. For example, in the moment, Germany haven't had any LNG terminal, but Germany bought LNG over ports in Netherlands or in Belgium or in Poland. Now we will have in the next winter, I think, 3 LNG terminals to import LNG. And in the second step, but it's a very short solution with chips. But on the second step, it's planned to have a terminal on land. But this land will be able, for example, also to import green ammonia, for example, or methanol from wind and solar. And that is the goal, to have a possibility to import, for example, green ammonia. Ammonia is a hydrogen derivative, and you can produce it with wind and sun power and electrolysis. It's, for example, used very much as a fertilizer in the agriculture. In the moment, it's made by using a huge amount of gas. And we can substitute this for ammonia from renewables. We save, we're using much less fossil fuels. And that's the idea with the terminals. But we don't want a new lock-in. And we're looking very strange how much is coming and when is the possibility to shift as fast as possible to hydrogen derivatives. I think there would not be importing on hydrogen. That will be produced at the place where it's used, or it's coming by pipeline. On the terminals, I think we will see hydrogen derivatives.
Thank you very much. So maybe before we come to the perspective of Colombia, you want to react, Lea, right?
Yeah, there are just 2 things I would like to mention. First, I know of like 12 projects that were planned, not 3. And according to the DUH, if only the 7 ones that are most likely to be built, if they are built, then they would emit over 2.1 gigatons CO2, which is equivalent to 3/4 of the German remaining carbon budget. So these point to huge overcapacities. That's also why the DUH was criticizing it. And the second point is about importing hydrogen or ammonia or any other green energy derivatives. I think the problem about that is that if that's the plan, I don't really understand why the government is not limiting the permissions for the terminals to use fossil fuels to a certain date. So why are the operating licenses not time limited right now? I mean, that would be so easy. You could just issue only time limited operating licenses to make sure that we avoid this technological lock-in effect.
Maybe to not keep this a discussion between the two of
Yeah.
you, we will keep this question for later. But maybe now to you, Sophia. Now, after hearing what the 2 Germans on the panel were talking about overcapacities, what's your reaction to this? Coming from your perspective, coming from the realities in Colombia, what would this mean for you in your country?
I want to touch base on 3 points. The first one, based on the environmental assessment labor work that you were mentioning. So that means that the regulations in my country then are failing. And there's a financial responsibility from the German government, the German banks, the Commerzbank, the Deutsche Bank, that are still financing El Cerrejón without demanding that human rights are not being violated. And this keeps continuing every single year without any accountability or divestment from fossil fuels from German banks. And yes, the German government has a lot to do with German banks because they're your country's banks. The second point is right now, like when you talk about opening like green solutions and bringing green energy and like improving the development of undeveloped countries according to European standards, these same extractivist and colonialist models are being replicated when this energy arrives to my country. In La Guajira, the department where El Cerrejón is located, on the north side of the department, there is this big mine, El Cerrejón. On the other side of the country, of the department, on the south, are the wind and the solar farms. They're both doing the same. They're displacing communities. They're killing the people. And they're spilling blood across the department. So the communities are not only fighting against fossil fuels, but also with the same green solutions that are presented, and they're not sustainable in time. So what we want, what the people want, it's actual solutions that they're not being affected by it. They're not the ones that should leave. The ones that should leave are the big companies.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Maybe Gabriel, from your perspective from South Africa, is this what they are talking about, the just transition?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I would invite you to come and live 1 week in a coal-affected community. 1 week, you will not survive. Not because of the people. The people will take care of you. The best people will take care of you. But you will not survive because of the realities that our communities have had to harden themselves up to become. People who live in South Africa who are aware of the harms of coal-affected communities, of coal extractivism, of burning of these fossil fuels. We're aware of it. We may not live directly next to the mine, but the activists that we work hand in hand with every single day, even the stories will lift the hairs on the back of your neck. I think too often when we develop policies and when we act forward, we don't keep this in mind. There's no face. It's just a country. When we spoke to Mr. Schultz, I asked him, because he said, well, your country is happy with it. I said, my country or my people? He said, well, it's a democracy. I said, yes, but there's two different realities. There's the government you're engaging, and then there's the people who are being forgotten along the wayside. You say that energy is being used as a weapon right now. And yes, it is, but there's another weapon at play, and it's government power. And you're using it, not you, but your government is using it to devastate so many other people. Because you're not getting it there, you're going to get it there. Who cares what's going on there? Who cares about the human injustices and the human right violations happening over there? Because we're going to get the energy from, we're going to get gas from Senegal, we're going to get coal from Colombia, we're going to get coal from South Africa. Who cares? They'll figure it out. We've given them money to transition. And then I just want to kind of answer your question, Danny, sorry.
It's fine.
I think right now as it stands, youth communities, labor have been left out of the conversation. Just Transition was founded by the labor movement. And yet they were not a part of the co-creation and the development of the Just Energy Transition Partnership Plan. Not authentically, at least. Youth were definitely not. I know this because I work with young people all across my country. I work with organizations that engage young people all across my country. If someone's looking for a young organization, they look to me because I know the young people engaging in the space. And I sure as hell have not, pardon my French. A Just Transition has these groups and more present. A Just Transition is justice-based and orientated. It's one that prioritizes the needs of not only the generations today, the planet today, but the future generations to come. So I will put it here is, to me, a Just Transition looks like one that is co-created, co-designed with the needs of the people that I've
painted out in front of me right now today. The people suffering, the people dying, the people who refuse, if they refuse to sign away their rights to their land, get killed, get assassinated in their home in front of their grandchildren. That's a real situation. Mamfikile Nchangase was shot 2 years ago in her home because she refused to sign. These are the realities on the ground. A just transition does not prioritize the needs of the global north, but the needs of the people suffering in the global south. How does Germany justify this? How does Germany look at the injustices happening and say, yes, we're going to do it anyway? Who gives a damn?
Thank you, Gabriel. I saw that Sophia wanted to... Yeah, I saw that Sophia wanted to add up on this.
Yeah, so you're welcome to El Cerrejón. Actually, the only people that can go to El Cerrejón are the big CEOs, usually European, white men in suits paying for the coal. But our people cannot even be there. They have to move. They have to leave the territory. They have to leave the country. But when they seek refugee, like outside, when they seek refugee to the European Union, they're being denied and they become illegal. So where does my people go if they cannot be in their own land? You know about El Cerrejón. That means that you know about blood coal. That means that you're aware of what El Cerrejón is doing in my country. That means that you can go there, see the mining, because you're protected by the illegal armed groups that are controlling the territory. The same illegal armed groups that kills every environmental defender, every indigenous people that is against opposing to the minery. Colombia is one of the 3 most dangerous countries to defend the environment according to Global Witness. And the numbers keeps rising. When we talk about defending the climate, the territories, we also talk about social issues and social injustices. And it's not fair that the ones enjoying the ecotourism, enjoying the beautiful landscapes of La Guajira are white men and not the people of Colombia.
Thank you very much, Sophia. I'm pretty sure that it's not very easy to react on those things you heard, but maybe this is exactly what this event should be about. So, Mr. Wenzel, if you want to give reactions to what you just heard.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very impressive to hear you describing the situation in your country. On the first thing I can say, we do everything to accelerate to a transition of our economy, of our industry, and we want to go faster even in the former times. When I first visited a COP, one like this, it was in 2013 in Warsaw. And I came there to understand why it didn't happen enough. It was 4 years after Copenhagen, and the process of protecting the climate was ticked. It was 2 years before Paris. And it was very interesting to see how it works, to understand, try to understand how a process like this in Sharm El-Sheikh works, and how we can come together and to fight stronger for climate action. And I think what very important was in the last years, the young people's movement. protesting in 120 years, 120 countries on the same day. It was so impressive to see that what the young organized there. And it made a lot of pressure on the countries, on the states, to change the situation. But on the other hand, I'm now in the government in Germany, and I see that we can't switch over in 1 year. The transition needs time. And I would like to remember also that in 2015, when we had the Paris Agreement, which was quite of a diplomatic wonder, because every country of the world signed this agreement. Imagine in this year with the Russian war, if we have to have every country, it would be much more difficult. But in 2015 it happens. And we had another UN resolution in 2015. We had the UN resolution about the Sustainable Development Goals and the due diligence for sustainable and humanitarian affairs. And we are committed to this too. And that's why we're discussing the supply chains of the companies in Germany. Where does your product coming from? It is produced with child labor. What's the social impact? What's the sustainable impact? And we're looking what these companies do offward. For example, in Colombia, I think it's the company is part of Glencore, a big Swiss company. Swiss is not part of the European Union, but in the European Union and in Germany, we try to implement this due diligence on humanitarian and environmental affairs in the supply chain. And that's both important, climate action and on the other hand the sustainable development goals, to see that too, what will happen there. And so I think the young movement to come together and to see the situation in the other countries and to see the impact and to looking for solutions together, that's very important.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that some of you already raised questions while you did your statements, but I'm sure that there are also questions that you maybe want to ask to each other. So I would now give the floor to one of you who wants to start to ask a question also to other people on the panel. Maybe, Mr. Wenzel, we can also start with the question that you already raised about supply chains. Is there somebody who wants to react on this?
I'm going to not answer because I don't know enough about the topic. And also because your responses to what Sophia and I said was just, you're a star, superstar. And so I'm not really keen to engage you're a star, superstar situations. I don't give a damn, actually. You've said that we're amazing, that the youth movement is outstanding, yet you're not listening to what the youth movement is asking for. So what's the use in engaging you further, yeah? I kind of feel quite upset. This is my first COP, and I expected as much. I think the reason I can't speak on it is because there are labor unions that can, there are individuals in NGOs that can, and we'd have those answers if they were in the room when the decisions were being made, but unfortunately aren't. So, me as a young person, as someone with limited viewpoint on the world, because clearly there must be a viewpoint that we don't understand enough to engage in spaces, that we're always, that you can say we're a star, and we won't see past that as just more pandering to us. we see it as pandering. We understand it, we acknowledge it. And what I'll do now is I'll go and engage our different unions in South Africa, the ones that we partner with, the ones who will be mobilizing with us on Saturday in South Africa. And I will ask them about it so I can understand a bit more. But perhaps that question should be asked in a different way. Why aren't labor unions in the space so we can discuss how supply chains can be handled? Why aren't relevant stakeholders in the room when those things need to happen? That's the answer I'll have there. The only reason I spoke up now is because otherwise it seems like we have nothing to say.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Is there maybe... Sophia.
I just want to clarify something. Like, yes, but it's not only Glencore. It's also BP company. It's also Anglo-American Ashanti. It's also the Drummond company, and they're all financing El Cerrejón. And also, as I mentioned before, Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank are taking some shares of these companies and investing in these companies that take the profit from El Cerrejón. And as I said before, still, the only coal that goes out of Colombia, it's from El Cerrejón. That's the coal that's arriving to Germany. So yes, it's not only a matter of giving the responsibility to Sweden, to the Swedish companies, as you were saying, because you're still using our coal. So it's an issue of taking accountability of that.
Leah?
I think I would have a question for the two of you, because Gabriel, you already mentioned like some aspects of what a just transition energy partnership would have to include. But I was just wondering, like, if you could talk further about it. Like you already said, like the people who are concerned need to be at the table. Yes, I 100% agree. I was just wondering, like, if you would like to continue elaborating a little bit what a just energy transition would mean to you, how it would need to be designed, whether you know any somehow positive examples or just bad ones, but ones we can learn from.
Yeah, so I think there's right now in South Africa there's two different things. There's the Just Energy Transition and then there's the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Mm-hmm. They complement one another, but they are different. Because one is a framework of how we'll move through it. Mm-hmm. That was designed by the Presidential Climate Change Commission in South Africa, which is a board of different civil society, business, individuals. At the end of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And there's it's an advisory body. So that body advises what could be done. And as you know, with advice, we do it with our friends. We take our friends' advice and then we ignore it and we do what we want anyway. Don't see that guy again, we see that guy again. Don't talk to that girl again, we talk to that girl again. It's advice. Whether or not you'll take it or not is up to the person in charge at the end of the day. And so I think a big problem right now is that those bodies aren't seeing each other. One is developing what a framework could look like. The other is developing how we get the money, how we use the money, and how the money flows through the different spaces. And I think there is the problem, is that how the money is being flowed through is a deep, deep problem. In South Africa, we have this magic trick where we make money disappear. And unfortunately, it's because civil society doesn't have even observation aspects to transparency and accountability of that fund. And so I think, to me, methodologies of how we can begin to look at it is so that we can get transparency as to how things are being developed, first of all. We can be brought into the room, not just in ceremonial ways, but in actual ways. We can actually have a voice at the table. We can throw the table out and we can sit around and talk to each other like this. But I think a problem is that we're not in the room to understand what's going on in the first place. The jargon and the nonsense that's going on the documents aren't accessible. We have to engage lawyers like Center for Environmental Rights in South Africa. We've got to work with them so that they can break it down for us, so that we can break it down for young people, so that they can break it down for their parents. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? Break down, break down, break down, break down, break down. By the time you get here, they've already made a decision of what they're going to do over there. And so I think if those spaces can be made more accessible, if how money is being, the decisions around money is being made could be more transparent, and if we were actually allowed in spaces that are dictating how our future looks, it would be entirely different. We would not have new aspects and investments in gas. Right now, our coastlines were up for grabs damn near. In the last 2 years, we have fought so much. And we won both cases. We won both cases. I think that deserves a round of applause. Civil society beat gas extraction off our coastlines in South Africa. That would have not only devastated our biodiversity, but would have devastated the livelihoods of frontline communities who depend on small-scale fishing, who wouldn't have gotten the jobs that are promised in these spaces. In closing to your question, Leah, I think, to me, a just transition looks like what I've said already, but also one toward green jobs, clean energy, and not nuclear, for goodness sake, and a space where transparency and accountability is managed properly. One where we aren't held hostage to pay things back while other countries continue to extract from us and emit, despite historical emissions, which I think Germany, we all know Germany doesn't acknowledge. Hence the fact that they're continuing destruction of Lützerath. But I won't go there. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I saw that Mr. Wenzel wanted to react on that.
Yes, I have a question. One thing is to stop coal. For example, this discussion, you mentioned we have this discussion in Germany too, and very hard political fights about stopping, for example, extraction of lignite coal. And it's still not over, even in Germany, the using of coal. But if we talk about just energy transition partnership, what is in your view, the second and the third important goal, what must happen in this partnership that you feel coming closer to the goal of this partnership? What's the next steps from your view?
Yeah. So from my view, it would be, first of all, to understand enough about it. Like I said, step by step by step by step by step, and then I understand, and then I'm able to engage young people, then I'm able to bring it back. Through public participation and meaningful consultation needs to happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. I mean, I understand when you say that it needs to happen over time, and coal mines are not going to be shut down tomorrow, because otherwise we end up displacing so many people. So many jobs are lost. So it's not going to be switched off tomorrow and then people are unemployed and homeless the next day. There's obviously a switch that needs to happen. But what we can do is stop building new fossil fuel exploration. We can cancel future coal. That's what we're trying to do in South Africa right now, is stop the new 1,500 megawatts of coal-fired power that will be brought online potentially. If we actually, 2 years ago, if we actually invested in renewable energy like we were supposed to, we wouldn't still be in load shedding. If those who don't know load shedding, it's what's happening in the UK right now. It's a very new phenomenon to them. To us, it's just called, oh, the lights are off. For about 6 hours a day, twice a day, at certain times. That's what load shedding is. Imagine coming home, waking up in the dark, not being able to wash, not being able to eat, going to work, coming back, and you can't even cook. You can't wash the day off of you. And you have to just move on. I'm not done. I'm not, thank you. It's youth day. It's youth day.
That is the fossil world.
I'm not done. Thank you. I think a big thing to note is that if we actually stopped it and started building renewable energy, for the next 3 years we wouldn't have load shedding in the foreseeable future. If we took preemptive measures to stop the issues we're in right now, we wouldn't have the issues for the next 3 years. Right now, our government are bringing on the renewable energies, but for 3 years, we're going to be sitting without power because of unreliable forms of energy. I think for me, I need to your question, sorry, I would need to consult the people that are able to break down the documents for me so I can engage it properly and give you an authentic answer. I can email if you'd like. But a problem is that we need to be able to say, cool, a just transition is going to happen, and we're going to stop it here, and we're going to stop putting new energy that's brought from fossil fuels online. If we don't do that, just why are we wasting so much money on COPs? Why are we like 40,000 in a building? You know, yesterday we saw the sewage come up. Perfect analogy for what's actually going on. All the shit that's happening is bubbling up to the top.
Thank you, Gabriel. I have Leah on my list who wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I was actually would like to share an observation as well, because I think what we need to do in Germany is to really acknowledge that this is a crisis we're in. And it's not only climate crisis, there's biodiversity crisis, there's obviously human rights crisis, and it's not coming, it's already there. And I think as long as we don't acknowledge that it's a crisis, we won't be, politics won't be able to take adequate measures to actually mitigate it. And I think we need to change the idea of what is possible, of what is realistic in light of this crisis, in light of the conditions you talked about, the human rights issues people face in the global south mostly, and the possibilities we have in Germany. It's just really, especially like listening to the two of you, I think for me it's impossible to understand why we're not doing more right now. And that's because of all the people suffering right now, but also for all the future generations that are going to suffer, especially in the global south. So what I would like you to think about is like what is realistic and under which circumstances things might be realistic, and what can we do in Germany? How can we do more than we're doing right now, and why are we not doing it? Because as the two of you showed, we can't justify it. And we have plans about how to do more.
For example, we want to be climate neutral until 2045. You say we can do that until 2035, not 45. That's 10 years earlier. What we have to do is to build a huge amount of solar power modules, to build windmills on land and offshore in the sea, and we have to make it much faster than in the last years. And it's also necessary to go to the places where we can't use electricity. We can drive with electricity. An electric car is much more efficient than a combustion car. It needs only 25 or 30% of the primary energy than a combustion car. We can heat with electricity, with a heat pump. It's much more efficiency than using gas or oil. But we have parts of the industry, for example, where we can't use electricity. For example, to make steel. We need, for example, hydrogen. Or if we want to fly less, it's one possibility, but if we want to fly, we need, for example, hydrogen. If we're using chips, it's also a part where we must have an alternative for oil. And so this transition is a joint transition of a lot of countries. We work very close together in Europe. 2 weeks after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the Prime Minister of the European Union met in Paris, and they started the Repower EU plan to accelerate using of renewables, to accelerate saving energy, to work together with countries like South Africa and a lot of others to have energy partnerships. And I mean partnership, to show what's the problems in our countries, what's the problems in your country, or what's the problems in your country, and to discuss it, what we can do together. And I know we have strong companies, and we have a problem with the terms of trade for the countries of the global south. And that's also an item we have to discuss. And I think this COPs, if we go home in 10 days or in 8 days, maybe we not achieved what we want. But we can achieve more. When I was first on a COP, we were maybe on a path where we're getting an Earth 5 or 6 degrees warmer than today. Now we are not on the right path. If we don't getting faster with climate action, we are on a path of about 2.8 degrees hotter. Guterres, the General Secretary of the United Nations, said that is the highway to hell. And so we have to accelerate. But this place here is a good place to discuss how can we do that, how can we achieve that. Because between 2013 and today, we are much better than 2013, but we are a lot behind that where we have to be.
Thank you very much. I saw Sophia.
I have 2 points on this. I want to give also an example of, I don't know the word in English, but I think it's the same, hydroelectric. In Colombia, when these plants are built, it's called Hidroituango. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you don't. If you haven't, look for it. Hidroituango, it was supposed to be the biggest hydroelectric plant in Colombia, and it was going to give like hydroelectric energy to my country. And not only to the 100% of the population, because only 51% of Colombian people has access to energy. So when we talk about energy transition, we first need to guarantee the access to energy. As Gabriel was mentioning, people doesn't have how to cook, how to wash the dishes, how to clean the clothes, and that means also more labor work to women, to peasant women especially, women in the rural areas, girls, young girls that cannot go to school because they are the ones that need to cook, find the wood to cook, and also make the double work to clean not only their clothes but their brothers' clothes, their parents' clothes, their uncles' clothes. So when Hidroituango was built, the illegal armed group that was controlling that part of the territory in Colombia, it is the phenomenon of paramilitarism. Paramilitarism got, really tied with the local government at that time. And Hidroituango displaced more than 4,000 people and took place more than 8 massacres. It's that of the word. Okay, massacre. So renewable energies are presented as the big, great solution. But as I said before, you're doing the same. Hidroituango is still a case in Colombia that hasn't taken accountability of what they've done to the people. And not only the contamination and because when the river arrives, the minerals are extracted, and well, you know more than me that part of the energetical process and how the hydroelectric works. But the communities that depended from the river had to move to seek food from another river. plant wasn't ever finished. Never, never. But still left a lot of blood across the river. And we don't know which people were killed and the exact amount of people that were killed, because the plant was built on top of the cadavers of the people. And that happens with many power plants across the country. Right now, Colombia has an energetic potential really, really huge. We can do solar, we can do wind, we can do hydroelectrics. Actually, many of the cities depend on hydroelectric. But they're still building more and more plants. Who is this energy going to? Because it's not for the people. I'm giving a lot of names. I'm giving a lot of banks' names, enterprises' names, and the names of the projects. And this, I think this is the first time that I say the names, like all of the names, because in my country we cannot do that. Even though I'm an activist from the city, I have the privilege to say those names. My grandma's family, they were peasants in a region really exploited from minery in Colombia. They were raising their voices, and her father got incarcerated, imprisonated, and he got sick because of it. Her brothers had to move to the big city, dressed as women, so the illegal armed groups were not going to take them to the war. Those same illegal armed groups that today are continue being financed by the big enterprises that arrive to the country, so they can protect the development that goes, the money goes not even to our country, because in La Guajira at least 37,000 children are suffering from malnutrition. Only 1% of the profit of El Cerrejón is actually going to the department. You can see many studies in the website of the coal mining that's saying that El Cerrejón is doing sustainable mining. How do you call sustainable mining? Like, that doesn't even make sense. But even the people that work there, they know that it's really bad. But there isn't an alternative to people. So it's not about, in my country, it's not about use less cars, use less energy, use less light. The thing is that the system is not providing us solutions, green solutions and alternatives to that. Usually electric cars are more expensive, but people need to go to their works. My city is really chaotic, and there isn't a way of having more cars, more electric cars. How are you asking a people that doesn't even earn more than $100 a month to get an electric car, to buy organic products, to buy bamboo toothbrushes, taking into account that these are not like proper solutions? So it's not about asking the people that are most affected by the climate crisis to do their best at being green. It's about demanding accountability and bringing different, green-based solutions to not only the global north, because, historically, compensation, but also supporting the local-based solutions and the local-based processes. Communities are the ones that are actually taking care of the planet, not the solutions presented by big countries.
Thank you very much, Sophia. We have Leah and Gabriel.
I don't think I have to add so much about it. I just want to reinforce that I agree that the solution can't be just to kind of reproduce the old colonial patterns that we've been enacting as the global north. And I think especially in Germany, it's also about sufficiency. And just regarding the point you mentioned before, that of course we need like electricity across all sectors, and I know it's not easy. I'm not saying, I'm not naive. I know it's not easy to make this transition. What I'm saying is it's not easy, but it is possible, and it is possible to do it way faster than we are doing it right now.
I think what I'll say is, so over the last year, young people across the African continent co-authored a letter to the African Union, and that letter echoes beyond just the African Union. It calls for the end of fossil fuel investment and for the investment of renewable energy. This is young people from 21 different African countries, and it was signed by over 700 young people on the continent. And the only reason it's that small of a number of 700 young people signed is because the week before we left for COP, that's when we released it. And so I suppose my question is, and it's not one that you have to answer now. It can be one that you ask yourself every time you open your laptop in your office, every time you walk into a negotiation room or a talking space or wherever it is in your day-to-day, or I'll let you not look at it at home when you look in the mirror or something. I'll just say when you're at your office, how does Germany justify going against what people living the experience, not only in Africa, but in all fossil fuel extractive areas? How does Germany justify doing that, knowing that it's against what we want? And so, like I said, you don't have to answer it now. It's just one that you ask yourself every time you're about to work. And I'm not kind of casting a spell on you. I'm just saying, think about it every single time you're about to do something. Think about it when you're about to engage someone. Ask yourself, can you sleep at night knowing that this is happening and that there's complicity in the process?
Thank you, Gabriel. Okay. If there aren't any urgent reactions or questions anymore, I would very much like to open the discussion now to the audience. First of all, thank you so much for all your statements and this already very active discussion. I'm sure we could continue the discussion already with the question raised in the panel, but now I would give all of you the opportunity to raise questions. We kindly ask you to ask your question in a respectful and comprehensive way, and maybe introduce yourself very quick so that we know a bit about your background, and then also tell us who you addressed with your question, please. Was there already? A question, please.
First of all, thank you very much for this panel, which I think is very important. My name is Günther. I'm coming from Germany. I'm busy with nuclear issues for some decades, and thank you, Gabriel, for mentioning this, because we are worried about quite growing crowd of young people running around with blue T-shirts promoting nuclear as a solution to the climate crisis. At the same time, Mr. Grossi, Secretary General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, would like to build 550 new nuclear power plants, which is needed to make a significant contribution to the climate crisis. I don't know how many people know the Johannesburg, for example, is one of the most radioactive cities in the world. And I would like to ask you, as youth people sitting here, how do you deal with those youth that are promoting this, for our view, false solution to this climate crisis? Thank you.
I think I'll jump in there. So when we talk about renewables and alternatives, I think it all comes down to understanding the topic at hand. The alternative side is oftentimes where people find out, like, oh, maybe we could look at nuclear, but they don't think about the harms. So I live in Cape Town, and that's near Kuberg Power Station, and it's quite terrifying because the maps of how you handle a situation if a reactor blows is outdated as well. And right now, more recently, Peter Becker, who is the only civil society representative on the National Nuclear Regulator Board in South Africa, is actually being suspended from the board for being an activist. But he was an activist before they brought him onto the board. And so it was kind of like, did you do your background check or not? And so the way that we go about doing and talking about nuclear is weighing the pros and cons. It's having an honest and open discussion where we allow young people to just act on their own agency in that discussion. I think a problem with a debate when you sit like this and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, is just everyone's just like lifting their own shoulders and trying to prove a point to you, but not deep listening. With young people, I think, and this is not any offense to anyone older in the audience or on the panel, I'm joking, is that there's a bit more receptiveness to opinion and to facts. And so when we talk about bringing power online and how fast things can bring forward, in South Africa, for example, solar and wind are a lot easier to bring online, and it's a lot faster to bring online, and it's a lot cheaper to bring online. It also provides opportunity for jobs. In South Africa, there's 40% youth unemployment. And so when you talk about green jobs, jobs for young people, and jobs that can come sooner, I think it takes about 10 years to bring nuclear online. And so, I mean, even longer, but that's what they've been telling us at least. And so when we talk about bringing on power and how bringing on clean power can also provide jobs, that's how we begin to shift the narrative. It's about bridging that gap of understanding. It's about breaking down the misconceptions. But it's also about leaving space for those discussions to happen authentically and organically. You're never going to get anywhere if you try to push someone into a corner. That's why I think when we talk about a partnership, it shouldn't be a situation of, you know, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to tell me what to do, but rather bring us into the space and let's have a conversation about how we can authentically and organically move forward. Right now, that's not happening with the just energy transition in South Africa. And it's how we handle things with other young people in the movement as well. We all want a future that benefits us all and future generations to come, a future that benefits our planet. We all serve that future. But I think a main way, just to kind of in one sentence, is we play to the better part of someone. Everyone wants that better future. And because everyone wants that better future, we've got to believe that they are willing to look at the broader picture and understand the realities and the difficulties when it comes to nuclear and other fossil fuels. Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Okay.
There was a reaction from Mr.
Do you also want to answer, Lea or Sophia, or do you have something to add to this question? Or I'm sorry, I just thought maybe the...
Yeah, just some words about nuclear. I think nuclear is no solution for the world. In the moment we have 160 countries of the world organizing their energy and electricity without nuclear. And we have only 33 which operating with nuclear power plants. And when you're looking who is building new power plants, 90% electricity, the grid with renewables, and we can, that's totally right. We have work in the region, we have the possibility for local production, we have the possibility even to bring the grid to regions where they never had grids before. Not with coal, not with nuclear, not with gas. Because we have 600 million people on the world which have no energy access. We have 2.5 billion people on the world which have no possibility to cook without burning wood. So energy access is also very important, and we can organize it with wind and with solar, with geothermy, and with renewable energy. And I will mention another argument. 50% of the capacity to produce, to enrich uranium, conversion of uranium, and production of nuclear fuels is in the hand of Russia. And I don't want that we become addicted when we come back, came away from gas. I don't want to come in a new situation. Nuclear.
Thank you. I'd like to give the possibility to ask further questions.
My name is Jose Garibaldi, I come from Peru, and I would first like to thank you for organizing this very interesting event. And I have a question for all of you, and maybe for you in particular. When I hear you speaking, I realize, the influence of how do you say, how important process thought is in what we are discussing, because all what we have been arguing are issues about process. Whether we are including or not including, we're excluding or not excluding, etc. Where we seem to fail is to have a vision of destinations, of goals, of aims, how we see the end vision. As you were saying, the picture that you paint is chaotic. It doesn't have any sort of clarity as to what is the purpose. And a discussion about energy supply or how do you move from one place to another that does not account this end goal and focuses only on process has a number of problems. For instance, when you were discussing this point of how do you include or not include anyone in particular, it's difficult to see what it is that you're going to do. For instance, the point that you said about labor supply. I mean, you eliminate coal, there will be communities that are already dependent on coal, and then they need to shift to someone else, something else. That something else in turn needs to have a sort of vision. So I have two questions. Question one is, how do you envision the end goal? What is it that a society looks like that solves the problems that you're saying? And how does it do it in 2050? One. And two, what are you going to do yourself to make that happen? Not to criticize others to deliver it for you, but what is your role to do with that? I say it from the perspective of my generation. When I was your age, I also had power sharing. I had 2 hours, and we did not have water. And my generation sorted that problem. We have other problems now. We screwed up in a number of things, but sorted those. So question for you is, how you are going to do it, and what is the goal? Thank you.
Okay. Who wants to start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophia, maybe, and
Sophia?
then I'll go.
So, first, how are you going to solve the problem if we don't listen? It is really important to emphasize on the process and not only on the goal, because that's what we've been doing all this time, and look where we are. So I want to share, as you may know, Colombia changed the government. Right now we have a more focused government in human rights, and that's really, really great for our country. It's the first time in history with that point. And yesterday, the Ministry of Energy and Minery in my country was giving a panel about how Colombia is going to go into this route of just transition, because it's not only transition, it's just transition. So she was saying that they're going to take 6 months going through all of the country, listening to the communities, listening how they've been affected by the past energy processes and implementations of energy supplies that the country has been having. And in those 6 months, they're going to make 6 workshops. But still, my country has 32 departments. and 6 workshops for 32 departments, it's still really, really, really like nothing compared to the amount of perspective and people impacted by, the energy industry in my country. So it's a huge start to begin listening to the people and make them part of the conversations. Not only, as Gabriel was saying, break down the information and pass it until there's like almost nothing to say, and present the solution and buy the people with a few gifts, with food or little money compared to what is actually going to be taken from the project. So right now, what countries can do is support countries like mine, like South Africa, in doing these processes of listening to the people, incorporating their perspectives, incorporating ancestral knowledge with scientific knowledge. And based on that, make the clear path of how the just transition is going to be. Now the second one is, what am I doing, right?
It's not only you, but what can we do collectively, and your generation, what can your generation do collectively to make that?
Okay, well, my generation, what is doing collectively and what can continue doing collectively is support each other. When we talk about resistance in or ambition in solidarity, in my country, solidarity, it's really different to what you see as solidarity. We create collective power. We create experiences, and based on our experiences, we take care of each other. And that's what we need to start doing. Collective care, not only self-care.
Thank you, Sophia. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but do you want to add anything to the question?
Yeah, maybe. I will make it short, but I think we must have a common vision. A vision to save our climate, for climate action. A vision to save biodiversity. It's our insurance too. And a vision to reach the sustainable development goal. All the social aspects we discuss here today too. And you asked what you do personal. I think we must eat much less meat. I stopped eating meat about 14 years ago, and I think we can reduce much of the emissions if we eat less or nothing, because it's about 20 to 30% of the personal amount of CO2 emissions, and so it's a very big impact.
I think just jumping off of that question very, very quickly. I think, just adding to Sophia, it is about the process. Because we don't even know where our leaders have begun, because we've been left out of where they started. So we can't begin to put forward what's going on. You understand when you're playing cards how you're going to win because you get to see it, but no one else does. I think the problem right now is that we don't get to see what the cards are, what's on the cards. And that's why we are not able to give you, I'm not able to say, cool, there'll be so many renewable areas and this and that and this and that. That end goal can only be done and put forward once we've all come together and co-created it. Unfortunately, right now, there's an end goal in mind that our government has. That's not the end goal of the people and the government. That's the problem. And I'm going to answer your question on what I'm doing, because it was a direct question, not about the youth as a whole. It's working with young people to try to elevate their voice about what's actually going on. It's helping young people understand the concepts that are purposefully exclusive. It's bringing young people from rural spaces into
conversations that they don't have access to because of digital divide. During COVID, we are all put onto online spaces, but forgetting that so many young people don't have access to devices, and if they do have a device, luckily, data access is not something that's there. In Africa, in South Africa, what we do is support each other, like Sophia said. It's make sure that we are capacitated to act on our empowerment. Unfortunately, without that, we just sit around and aren't able to engage the spaces. And so that's what I'm doing. I think we can say we're going to use paper straws or eat less meat, but in South Africa, there's indigenous peoples that use meat for traditional practices. And to tell them to ignore their traditional practices because of big industries and big corporations is hilarious. And so while me, myself, someone who is a vegan, would love if we all eat less meat, I'm not going to dare tell someone whose indigenous practice it is to stop eating meat, because it would be a massive insult to them. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you,
Thank you very much. Maybe one last word from Leah to give you also the chance, and then we have to go.
Okay, really short answer. Honestly, sometimes it makes me angry if people say or give the question to us as the young generation, because I think our generation has driven so much of the change and the improvements that we have seen. And I think it's a lot about people in power, usually older people, listening to what the young people demand. And then my personal view about what needs to happen is that first, in the global north, we have to cut down emissions, and we have to cut them down very fast. And that's what we need more effective regulation for. I don't think the solution is about what we can do personally. I think the solution is mostly because that's what we've been trying in the north for 30 years, and it hasn't worked. It's a lot about systemic solutions and laws. And then at the same time, I think there is a deeper process that needs to happen. And I agree it is about the process, because I can't tell you what the future will look like, but I think it needs to be led by a reconnection to each other, to listen, to hear what we're doing, a reconnection to ourselves, and also to the nature. Because if we do that, then we can keep extracting and exploiting the nature like we've been doing it for the last centuries.
Okay, thank you so much, all of you, for your closing words. I'm sure we could continue the discussion here, but unfortunately we don't have the time. So thank you so much for your active participation and all your very interesting statements. And yeah, I think we are very happy that you all could join the panel and really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Thank you very much.
everybody for joining the audience.